Joining us for 30 minutes, Larry Klayman, who is the chairman and founder of the organization Judicial Watch, that organization founded in 1994. Mr. Klayman, you no doubt will be in attendance at the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee hearing today. That is kicking off at 10 o'clock. Jerry Sieper has this preview of the hearing today in this morning's Washington Times. Committee will question 4 on White House email. What is this hearing about?
Doug, this is really an outgrowth of the Clinton scandals, particularly Filegate and Chinagate. What we learned recently, we had 2 White House whistleblowers, people that actually worked inside the White House, perhaps the first John Dean type people to come forward, although I wouldn't equate them with John Dean. These people did everything correctly. But they were intimidated. They were threatened to be quiet. They were threatened with prison if they discussed the suppression of a major amount of evidence, perhaps as many as 1 million email and 457 hard drives, which according to contractors contain incriminating evidence about Filegate, the sale of 457 hard drives, which according to contractors contain incriminating evidence about Filegate, the sale of seats on Commerce Department trade missions, Monica Lewinsky, and other scandals. This information, once it comes out, could rewrite the entire history of the last 7 years of this administration, because it's contemporaneous documentation which was not produced to Judicial Watch in our various lawsuits, not produced to Congress, and not produced to the independent counsel.
Who are these 2 witnesses?
They're both worked in the White House. One of them is called Betty Lambeth, and she's a contractor who worked for the overall contractor, Northrop Grumman, that ran the White House computer systems. Another one is Cheryl Hall. She was the first to come forward, Doug. She's the one who described.
Now, specifically, what is the charge about the obstruction of justice? What is being alleged?
There are 2 types of obstruction of justice here. One is failure to produce documents. These documents were called for by subpoena. The White House learned about their existence. This is email that was accidentally, as claimed by the White House, giving it the best light, stored in another computer system off-site. Computer glitch 2 years ago, but told the people that worked on the computer systems, if you discuss this, we'll make sure you're sent to prison. And they also knew that this email contained incriminating evidence because they did a test. They ran some email to see what was on it, some copies, and they found documents dealing with Filegate, Chinagate, and the other Clinton scandals. So clearly was relevant. Chinagate and the other Clinton scandals. So clearly was relevant. That's one aspect of the obstruction. The second, and perhaps even more serious aspect, are the threats to the employees to be quiet. You can't intimidate witnesses. That's called witness tampering, and that's what this hearing is going to seek to elicit information about. But there's our court case, and we've asked the judge to also look into this matter.
Well, now, to that point, not only is there a hearing that's occurring today at 10 o'clock, the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee, but your organization, Judicial Watch, has also been involved in that question. What specifically has your organization been doing on this matter?
We were the ones that brought this issue forward initially in sworn affidavits. This isn't Larry Klayman talking. It's not Lanny Davis who come on after me. These are independent, ordinary people in the White House who swore under oath to exactly what happened. And we gave that to the court in our Filegate case. We will be giving it to the court in our Chinagate case. Mini trial, an evidentiary hearing, to call these witnesses in, to get evidence, and if necessary, and the evidence will show that it is necessary, to bring criminal indictments in effect in the court through criminal contempt proceedings.
We are going to open up our phone lines. Our guest for the next 25 minutes or so, Larry Klayman, who is the founder and chairman of the organization Judicial Watch. We're going to be talking about the story, Judicial Watch. We're going to be talking about the stories and the court case involving the emails, alleged deleted or misplaced White House emails, in addition to other matters that you want to bring up with Mr. Klayman. We'll just also point out 2 matters. The 10 o'clock hearing that we mentioned, this is the House Government Reform and Oversight Committee. Our C-SPAN cameras will be covering that, but because of our previous commitments to covering the House and Senate live, you can see that hearing either later on a tape rebroadcast later today on C-SPAN, or you can go to our website, which is www.cspan.org on C-SPAN Radio. The phone number's up on the screen. We're going to open up our phone lines now for Larry Klayman, Waterford, Michigan, on the Democratic line. Good morning.
Good morning. I think you have to go back to the summer of 1997 in response to the Asian financial crisis, Bill Clinton was giving speeches in various parts of the world talking about the need for a new financial and monetary architecture to replace the current financial system. And right about that time is when all these groups went into overtime and stepped up their campaigns to try to discredit the president, basically to take his mind away from this deal with the financial crisis and attempt to destroy him so he couldn't act in a presidential fashion to do what needs to be done. I think you have to look at all the organizations that are involved in financing, funding, and trying to discredit the president to really get to the root of what this is all about against him.
Well, let me add here, we're not in the business of discrediting. We're in the business of justice. It just so happens this president's in power. Our group was the first group to call for the resignation of Newt Gingrich because he acted unethically on Capitol Hill. But these weren't Larry Klayman people that came into the office. These were White House people that came into the office and detailed this criminal obstruction of justice. So to say that we're trying to do it, thank God there are groups trying to do it, but this is the White House itself revealing through lower-level officials a massive obstruction of justice that may make Watergate look like a warm-up session.
Are you getting assistance from any other organizations?
We act independently. Our assistance comes from the American people. We're a public interest group. You had early on this morning Public Citizen, which is a liberal public interest group, and they do many good things. And sometimes we even cooperate with each other in sharing information. This isn't a conservative thing. This is a justice thing.
On our Republican line, Montrose, Michigan. Good morning.
I would like to ask...
Morning.
I would like to ask Mr. Klayman a question, and then I would like to make a comment. Mr. Klayman, do you get funding from Richard Mellon Scaife organizations?
Yeah, in fact, I'm very proud of that because Richard Mellon Scaife is a patriot. He's someone who has stepped in when there's no Justice Department to fund, various groups looking at illegalities in government. And we should give a great debt of gratitude to Richard Mellon Scaife, who is an American hero.
Well, my comment is Richard Mellon Scaife, and I'm making this comment as a Republican, and I hope you won't cut me off.
I won't cut you off. I question.
Richard Mellon Scaife has funded many groups that started in '92, the Independent Women's Forum, and I can go down a long, long list. My concern about this is you have obstructed this entire presidency. But in the process, you have destroyed any political discourse that could have occurred on an intelligent level. I am ashamed of the Republican Party and what they've come to represent.
Well, let me make it clear.
There is an evilness that you are...
Website at judicialwatch.org, you'll see many actions and much criticism leveled towards the Republican Party. We are conservative. We're proud of it. We're proud of some of our supporters who have helped us. Most of them are the American people. Overwhelming majority of support comes throughout the country. Who have helped us. Most of them are the American people. Overwhelming majority of support comes throughout the country. But the reality is we are nonpartisan, and the next administration better obey the law or they're going to have just as hard a time from Judicial Watch.
Larry Klayman, from 1979 to 1981, was a lawyer with the Department of Justice who worked on a number of cases, including cases involving the FDA and the Judicial Watch. Atlanta, Georgia, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Hello?
You're on the air.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia, and I believe when you first started out, you said the Judicial Watch was for justice. Started out, you said the Judicial Watch was for justice review?
No, I think what you do is look on our website. What we're for is we're a public interest watchdog. We try to keep politicians and government officials honest because, frankly, we don't have a Justice Department that will do the job. Whether it's a Democrat or Republican administration, the Justice Department is under the executive branch, under the White House, and it can't look into its own wrongdoing. So our goal is to root out corruption, to bring about justice through the courts, and to educate the American people on the need to having ethics in government.
Did you have a response, Atlanta?
you say you're a conservative. How can you be a conservative and spend thousands and millions of dollars on all of these investigations, and then nothing is ever done? The Republicans never do anything but investigate. That's all they do.
Well, again, the Republicans, I'll agree with you. Republicans do most of the things for show hearings. They're not in it for justice. I agree. Dan Burton here, I believe, is trying to get justice in this hearing coming up, but most of them could care less. It's just a way to get notoriety. So don't tell Larry Klayman that we are the Republican Party. We're not. But we are proud of being conservative, and most people in this country are conservative.
Among the witnesses scheduled to be at the hearing today, we began taking a look at the hearing that Congressman Dan Burton, who chairs the House, Hawkins, Betty Lambeth, and Sandra Golas, all of Northrop Grumman, Mark Lindsay, who is the Director of White House Management and Administration, Laura Crabtree, who's the Chief Information Officer for the Labor Department, and Beth Nolan, who is counsel to the President. In a few moments, we'll be joined by a former counsel to the President, Lanny Davis. Our next call for Larry Klayman, Kingsport, Tennessee. Good morning. Klayman, Kingsport, Tennessee. Good morning. Kingsport. One more time for Kingsport, Tennessee. Not there. Buffalo, New York. Good morning.
Yes, a question for Mr. Klayman about the ongoing loss status of that. Thank you.
Well, as the Clinton administration frequently does, as well as defendants, they file a lot of pleadings. The case has been assigned to Judge Royce Lamberth. It's in its preliminary stage. The defendants have filed motions to dismiss. We expect rulings in its preliminary stage. The defendants have filed motions to dismiss. We expect rulings pretty soon. This is an important case because as defendants, you not only have the President and Mrs. Clinton, but you have Al Gore, Bernard Schwartz, and Laurel. And the issues involve the transfer of high technology to the Chinese when at the same time Laurel was going on these trade missions that Ron Brown was putting on to China and elsewhere. It is the only case out there that's seeking to get enforcement remedies for what went on with this transfer of high technology. Again, Congress, run by the Republicans, abdicated its responsibility. It only published a report, but then said, well, let's try to correct it in the future. Unfortunately, these kinds of things will happen unless you hold the allegedly guilty people responsible, and that's what we're seeking to do in this lawsuit. Watch it. It will be going on beyond this administration, and it will reach into donors that involve Republicans as well as Democrats.
That lawsuit before the judge, the same judge who is hearing this lawsuit on the question of the White House emails.
Quite
is that right?
Coincidentally.
How many cases has Judicial Watch administration?
We have 57. We have other lawsuits. People say, how come, Larry, you have so many cases? I said if we had more resources, we probably would have over 100 because of the widespread corruption in this administration.
On the Republican line, Las Vegas.
Yes, good morning, sir. I would just like to applaud you and your group for doing all the great work that you're doing. Lord knows we need more Republicans alike would run amok if it wasn't for good, honest citizens watching them. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that. I might add there's one Republican that deserves our accolades and support in terms of what he's done in justice, not political. Deserves our accolades and support in terms of what he's done in justice, not politically, but in justice. And Judicial Watch takes its hat off to its client, Congressman Bob Barr, who stood there during the impeachment proceedings and in other proceedings and tried to get justice. He's the only one.
Well, Columbus, Ohio, good morning.
Hello? Hey, my first time calling.
Welcome.
I want to know, what happened to Susan McDougal? I thought what happened to her in court as far as Kenneth Starr and the investigations was kind of shicey to me.
Well, I suspect she's probably writing a book. She was actually in jail and developed a bad back. In a book, she was actually in jail and developed a bad back, and the judge let her out, so she's free as a bird right now. This is our justice system, which has failed repeatedly in the last 7 years, starting with O.J. Simpson, now with the independent counsel Wray, who has issued a report never having interviewed major witnesses, not looking at email. The American people, frankly, are fed up on both sides of the political aisle. Frankly, are fed up on both sides of the political aisle with a criminal justice system that simply scratches the backs of the big vested interests here in Washington. And that's what this is all about. The vested interest knows no political boundary, Democrat or Republican. It will take care of itself, them, whatever their political persuasion.
We have Jacksonville, Florida on the line, but you just mentioned independent counsel Robert Ray. I believe his first name is Robert. Judicial Watch, I understand, has brought charges or a suit against Mr. Ray. Is that correct?
We brought a Freedom of Information Act law.
Is that correct?
We brought a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit to get the documentation as to why he issued his findings now in Filegate. We knew that he wasn't going to have any findings. Ken Starr said that last year. Ray was Starr's deputy. But the timing of this looks like it was politically timed to help the White House. In fact, his press release could have been written by the White House. Talks about the cooperation of the Clinton administration. Talks about the cooperation of the Clinton administration with document destruction. Well, tell that to the Northrop Grumman contractors who were threatened with being jailed if they talk. So obviously Ray is getting something. I think the Washington Post, Doug, hit the nail on the head, or column by Roberto Suro last year. Ray was told that if he closed his investigations, that Janet Reno's Justice Department would not investigate that office for ethical...
Expecting a decision on that FOIA request.
Well, they've denied producing one document, so we filed a lawsuit in court, and it was assigned to a judge last Monday. So this case will be progressing.
Jacksonville, Florida, good morning.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Klayman, thank you very much for what you're doing. I have one question. Are you investigating anything to do with Andrew Cuomo and the HUD bids worth $5.2 billion that are missing, supposedly? I know Susan Gaffney, the agency's inspector general, has been supposedly conducting an investigation, but to this date she has had no indictments or any anything that's come to light. Indictments or anything that's come to light. Have you heard about this, and are you going to investigate it?
That's something that we should look into. I think it's good that you raise that. Sometimes we get good ideas on these TV shows, but we are looking at Andrew Cuomo in a number of areas, most recently this whole gun situation, which looks rather, frankly, shady in terms of what's going on at HUD. So we've been keeping close eyes of that department. That department, before he got there, had a problem with scandals, and I might add...
Florida, you're next with Larry Klayman. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Okay. I would like to be able to say what I want to say and not have Mr. Klayman interrupt me. First of all, I want our viewers to know that Mr. Klayman has been on Jerry Falwell's show. And Jerry Falwell, of course, is the one who accused the... I want our viewers to know that Mr. Klayman has been on Jerry Falwell's show. And Jerry Falwell, of course, is the one who accused the president of all kinds of misdeeds, including murder. I think our viewers should know that Mr. Klayman sued his own mother. I think that the viewers should know that if anybody has been against this country and has hurt this country, it is Larry Klayman.
Caller, well, hold the line. We have some allegations there.
I'm glad that was raised. First of all, I think should be admired. You don't admire him, but apparently you watch his TV show anyway. Secondly, with regard to my grandmother, I was protecting her. My grandmother's monies were taken by my stepfather. I believe in the rights of the elderly like I believe in the rights of the unborn, and this is a very sad situation. And if your grandmother was abandoned and her money was taken by your stepdad, would you let her lie with no one caring for her, and you let her lie with no one caring for her and no money to care for her at age 89? So I suggest that you think about what you would do at 89 if all your money was taken and you were abandoned. I'm glad you asked the question, because this is how the Clinton administration tries to smear people. This was raised by them. It's a mantra used by James Carville. And these are the kinds of things which I'm glad people ask, because I'm proud of support for religious rights leaders, and I'm proud of support for my grandmom. Thank you.
Orlando, did you have any follow-up?
Yeah, I mean, this man has done more. He's even suing the president and trying to destroy the chances of him getting a mortgage for his home. I mean, this man has done more to hurt the president than possibly anybody in this country. I wonder who's paying you, Mr. Klayman.
Well, first of all, we haven't tried to hurt the president. We've tried to bring about justice, but I'm glad...
I wonder who's paying you, Mr. Klayman.
Well, first of all, we haven't tried to hurt the president. We've tried to bring about justice, but I'm glad that we're issuing this reaction, because, you see, the president unfortunately got a mortgage under preferential rates that you couldn't get. Nobody else could get it. He couldn't afford this house. He deserves to have a house, but he shouldn't be buying a mansion for $2 million in Chappaqua, New York, when you can't go into the bank.
Mr. Klayman, this is perhaps a little off topic, but you mentioned, in the last caller mentioned Jerry Falwell. There was a story in this morning's USA Today. I couldn't lay my hands on it right now, but it discusses Mr. Falwell's plans to register 10 million new voters, I think. And it discusses Mr. Falwell's plans to register 10 million new voters, I think. And in his words, to become a new force or a force in American politics. Your thoughts on that?
We don't get involved in politics. We're nonpartisan. We're in it for justice. That's Mr. Falwell's affair. But I can tell you with regard to my knowledge of Jerry Falwell that he's a fine person. And my own personal beliefs, Larry Klayman, is that we need to bring back Judeo-Christian ethics or equivalent ethics, whatever your religion, to this society. That is the way we're going to keep ourselves from being destroyed. And what we've seen in this administration is a systematic effort over the last 7 years to destroy Judeo-Christian ethics. The Lewinsky scandal, Mr. Davis, if he's willing to be candid, will admit it. The administration welcomed that because that was a way to destroy the ethic in this country. The left is a worship of materialism. And unfortunately, this country wasn't based on that. Read the Constitution, and the only way we're going to survive as a civilization is to recognize certain basic ethical values.
Mr. Davis, that Mr. Klayman refers to, Lanny Davis will be our guest in about 5 or 10 minutes as we continue our conversation. Of course, Mr. Davis, former special counsel to the president. And our next call for Mr. Davis, or for Mr. Klayman, excuse me, Magnum, Oklahoma. Good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to say that, sir, you're not in this for justice. You are in this for money only, for bad money. This is the way that you're trying to bring our wonderful president and all of this down. This is the most wonderful to bring our wonderful president and all of this down. This is the most wonderful president and organization we've had since Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Quick question for you, caller, if I may. You're calling on the Republican line. Do you consider yourself a Republican?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right. Thanks for the
Well, anybody can call in any line, so I don't necessarily care that it's Republican or Democrat. But frankly, Larry Klayman could make a lot more money if I was in private practice, and so could everybody that works with us. That's simply false. And to say that this is the greatest president ever and to compare...
Question for you. In your mailings, you talk a lot about going after corruption in the White House. Meanwhile, we've come to learn that what you're doing with your money is you're, first, taking the money and spending it on more mailings, not going after the White House. And second, and this really infuriates me, we find out that, you know, a lot of people say goofy things about you on the internet. You're going after them, not using your personal lawyers to sue them for slander, but using my money and the money of other Judicial Watch contributors to go after little guys who are basically kind of poking you in the eye and having a little fun with you. I'm furious. I think you're a fraud. I'm thinking of getting together with other contributors and going after you in a class action suit that'll make your head spin.
Caller, a quick question, if I may.
Well,
for you.
This caller is not a supporter of Judicial Watch. This is an interesting show today. I think this is one of your more interesting ones. People wearing different hats and calling in. But the reality is Judicial Watch has several missions. Our mission is to bring justice in the courts. Our mission is to educate. We educate with our direct mailings, as many other people do. Even is to bring justice in the courts. Our mission is to educate. We educate with our direct mailings, as many other people do. Even Mrs. Clinton is doing direct mailings in New York, and this is the way you reach the people. But it is interesting. I think this show is one of the more fascinating shows I've been on, with people deciding that all of a sudden they're Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, and liberals. This case was certainly something.
Tenor of the phone calls this morning?
No, I'm not surprised, because obviously what we do is very, very strong. We're not here in Washington just sitting here writing articles. We're not sitting here giving speeches. We're bringing lawsuits. And this country has become very politicized, and that's unfortunate. And what I've tried to say is that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you should believe in justice. And when I was a young guy, I was neither, but I happened to have voted for Richard Nixon. And I worked for a senator, a Republican senator by the name of Dick Schweiker, who was the first to call for Nixon's removal. And I'll tell you something, we conservatives, we have to keep our own house in order, and that's what we've been trying to do, because if we're going to have the moral authority to tell other people what to do, then we have to act the same way. And I hope that the left, these people that have called in posing as different things, would recognize that it's in the interest of this country to have justice and to have accountability and to have ethics. And it's not something which is political. It's not us versus them.
For those of you, our viewers, interested in learning more about Judicial Watch, you can go to their webpage, which is www.judicialwatch.org. You can learn more about the organization and the various suits that they've brought concerning the administration. Mr. Klayman, before we let you go, quick question. What are you expecting to learn at this morning's hearing?
Well, we already know the facts. What we know here is that at least know the facts. What we know here is that at least 4 people are going to testify this morning. There are as many as 8 to 10 who will come forward. This isn't Larry Klayman. It's not Dick Scaife. It's not Jerry Falwell. These are people out of the White House who are threatening them to be quiet. This could wind up being more important than any other Clinton scandal because it shows the way this White House is operated, and it explains why to this day the White House is all spin, but it's no justice. You're going to hear some spin in a few minutes. The reality is I'm not going to be able to respond, but I ask the people just to watch this hearing and judge for themselves. These are ordinary people like you who are detailing a criminal obstruction of justice.
Larry Klayman, Chairman and founder of Judicial Watch, thank you for coming in.
You're welcome, Doug.
And we will continue our discussion and your phone calls with Lanny Davis, former special counsel to the President.
Include James Parker with The Economist and Betsy Hart, a columnist with Scripps Howard News Service. The U.S. House of Representatives meets today at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The U.S. House of Representatives meets today at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Today they'll debate a resolution